Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Great Guild Wars 2 Countdown. 49 or 46 days remaining till the launch of Guild Wars 2. The footage in the background for today comes from Thaddeus137. Thank you very much to them. It will probably be warrior stuff, I guess, early warrior stuff. You can find a link in the description below if you want to check out more of it. And today, more questions and answers. The topic for today, let's actually do this before news and all that kind of stuff for today, is the flat leveling curve. That was actually something I had originally on my 60 reasons and 60-second video from like a year ago now, and that's not changed. It still remains true. It's not exactly how I imagined it to be. It looks like the metrics are slightly different to what the original impression was going to be, but ArenaNet have basically settled on this idea that for Guild Wars 2, unlike other MMOs, it won't take longer and longer and longer to level up as you go along. So level 70 to 71 won't take 40 times as long as level 20 to 21. The idea is, I think around level 30, all your levels are going to take about the exact same amount of time. That doesn't mean that the experience required for levels will just flat out after a while. The experience required does go up, and also still increasing is the amount of experience you get from mobs by going to higher level zones. It's just that the rough amount of time will stay the same. So they're going to settle, I believe they said before, about an hour and a half of gameplay. Actually, from my experience in the beta so far, and bear in mind most of this is sub level 30, so how accurate it is we don't know right now, but most of my time in the beta I feel like it is still very, very fast leveling up, and I'm not sure whether they've chosen maybe slightly too short of a period of time, but that's where ArenaNet feels like it should be fun to gain a level, and that's what they've decided to go with. So you do have this flat leveling curve. It's not going to get harder and harder and harder, and eventually you will reach level 80 without it feeling like it was a massive, horrible grind. You just get to play the game and do what you want to do, and you'll level by proxy of that. And you can see that exactly with reaching level 80 just from doing crafting. Maxing all your crafting professions will also max your combat level, which is fantastic as well. So it's a cool part of Guild Wars 2, one that I think we're mostly familiar with at this point, but one of those little things, one of the little innovations. It's one of those situations where ArenaNet sat down and they looked at everything that happens in MMOs and they say, is this fun or not? Are we going to change this? They didn't change stuff for the sake of changing it. Most of the time they changed it because they saw there was a problem, and this is a big hallmark of MMOs, and it's been knocked out of the way. So we'll see how it goes for Guild Wars 2, but it's certainly a very exciting feature, and you can read more from a link in the description. What that link's going to be, I'm not sure though. I'm pretty much just said all there is to say. But moving on, there was a couple of newsy type things. Somebody's actually helping me now with a few links each day, which could be really interesting if this goes along. So hopefully I'll have more interesting things to talk to you all about every day. We'll see how it goes. But for today, there were two things that were brought to my attention. The first one is a video that some guys put out, and that again, oh, so much in the description. That again will be in the description. I really recommend you check this out. It's pretty cool. There were a load of people, right, in Divinity's Reach. We know that one of the districts there had been destroyed and it collapsed down, and it's this big mystery, and it's like, what the hell is going on here? The Great Collapse, it's called. It was once the entertainment district of Divinity's Reach, but since it was a collapse, that's now all kind of spread out over other areas of the city, so you can see like Uzalon's machine in one place and all the confetti and stuff in another place, and that's why this place was originally where everything was, the entertainment district, and now it's gone. Well, ever since, I think it was the first trailer we saw this, ever since we saw this place existed, and there's this long bridge that goes across it, this rickety bridge that you can walk across in game, everyone's wanted to know what is down there. And I remember one of the early days after this first came out, there were actually some devs talking about it on the forums and saying, oh, it's really cool down there, yeah, I've been down, and everyone's just wanted to go down and see what it was. For a long time, I think we all kind of assumed that it was going to be a dungeon for Guild Wars 2, but if you look at it now, that's not a dungeon. Actually, that's not a dungeon for the game, which is interesting because in game you can see that there is like this big wooden door that you can walk up to, and it certainly seems like at some point that door will open and you can descend down the other side, like down the scaffolding, and you should be able to go down there. So it looks like it's a candidate for a dungeon after the launch of the game, actually, and you can see in all of the signature cities for the races there are similar places like this, which is kind of cool. But the one in Divinity's Reach, everyone's been really excited about and wanting to go in because it's just a hole, right? So you can see it there and you're going to be tempted to try and jump through. Now, most of the times there are things obstructing you, like if you're on the bridge you can't quite jump high enough over the rope, but even from the first beta, people were trying to get around that, and they were like jumping over stuff and doing weird platforming things, but you're always hit with an invisible barrier. So all you could do was look down, this really deep shaft. All you could do was look down it, and you could never actually get through because of this invisible barrier. Introducing the video that I was shown today, somebody, through whatever luck, it doesn't even look like while he's got the camera on, he's trying to do this. He climbs up a tower first, and it's got nothing to do with anything, but he walks along and just literally falls through the floor where a rock is that's just not got any collision vision on it, and he just falls, and he falls into the hole, and he goes right down it, and this is what we've all been wanting to see for so long. And he survives the fall as well, because he gets low enough that the water level of the map is there. So I get the impression, I know it's like this with other games, but I get the impression it must be the same for Guild Wars 2, where there is on any given map a point where the water level comes to, and he drops down to that point. Now the water's not textured or anything, so he's swimming, but in apparently textureless water, so it just looks like he's kind of floating around, but he is right down the hole, and he survives because of this water here. And you can see there's like these crows flying about right next to his head as if he's out in open air, but actually he's swimming around. And you get to see, it's only a very short video, about 2 minutes, but it's really cool to go down there. Obviously he doesn't load straight into a dungeon and we get to see all this fantastic stuff, but it is cool, and finally somebody got down the Great Collapse. The other thing that I probably should have mentioned a while ago for newsy-ish stuff is Curse at the moment have got loads of beta keys. They've got 20,000 that they're giving away just to regular people, and 5,000 of those are going first come first serve to premium members of Curse. So if you have signed up to Curse at some point, then there you go, you've got a pretty easy chance to get one of these beta keys if you haven't pre-purchased the game. That's a lot of keys. I actually heard a figure of 50,000 at one point. Maybe that's dwindled down by now, but 20,000 keys still up for grabs. That's pretty nuts. So if you didn't pre-purchase, if you have been on the fence about Guild Wars 2 and you aren't against betas, you don't feel like they spoil too much for you, then this is your chance. There's loads of keys there. I get the impression that with ArenaNet releasing the Sylvari and the Asura and giving away so many keys like this, they want as many people as possible to get in there and stress test the game, which really for Guild Wars 2 is more important than maybe even than other MMOs, because it's not just server capabilities anymore, it's about how these dynamic events are scaling and stuff. And we all know that they've got their internal testers and stuff, but whether the guys at ArenaNet are enough to really push and see how these environments react under huge numbers of players, I seriously doubt. So this is probably why they're doing it. It's the last beta before the launch, and yeah, there's a lot of keys, so go for it. Anyway, on to the questions and answers. First one was by Jetta J1, who said, is there going to be any kind of, and we've answered this before, but it had a few thumbs, is there going to be any kind of official role-playing support in Guild Wars 2? From what I've seen, there won't, and I've also heard there's a lack of emoticons, though I haven't played the betas. I really enjoyed how active the roleplay community is or was in World of Warcraft, and I kind of missed that in Guild Wars 1. Coming mainly from Guild Wars 1, I've never really been a part of any kind of roleplay community, which is a bit of a shame, because Guild Wars Tyria is a pretty decent setting that I feel like there is a lot of scope for that. But as I've said before, just to clarify to everyone, there is no official support. There are no servers that are being designated as roleplay servers. There will be roleplay servers, but they will be community driven, and it will be up to the roleplayers themselves to first figure out specifically what those servers are, and to make sure you congregate to those servers and make sure that you foster your own communities there, because, and I've discussed it before so we won't go into length, ArenaNet don't seem to think that that's on them to figure out, so they're not doing that. There will be role-playing, definitely. A lot of people have been talking to me about how they want to role-play and stuff. You know, a lot of people kind of assume, oh, if you're really into the lore, you must quite like role-playing. I've actually never role-played, and I might not ever role-play, but by proxy of what I'm doing here, I have had a lot of people talking to me about their hopes for role-playing, and yeah, it will be a part of Guild Wars 2, but just not an official one, which is a shame. As for lack of emoticons, well, there's a lot more than Guild Wars 1 had. Obviously, some are still locked out, as I said, like /dance at the moment, though, since I did mention that in a previous video, loads of people linked to me. You can actually find in certain events, certain characters dancing, like there's an Asura in Queensdale that will dance, and you can see his dance, which is kind of cool. So they are in the game, and they're just kind of locked out at the moment, I guess, until ArenaNet are 100% happy with them. But yeah, that's the answer to your question. No official support. The next one comes from Durka33, who said, similar to the previous question, this is also something I covered before, but wanted to go back to when I saw how many people didn't know. What happens to the dwarves, asks Durka33, who do not accept the call of the Great Dwarf at the end of the Eye of the North? Ogden says that the call can be postponed until the dwarf is ready to join the eternal fight. This brings up other questions about the Stone Summit. Those dwarves are a splinter faction of the Deldrimor, and obviously would never willingly accept sacrificing themselves. So, do they simply die out, or does the rebel clan linger on? Specifically how this happens, we don't know. We don't know whether the Stone Summit just died out or what, but ArenaNet have said every single dwarf does become stone by the end. By Guild Wars 2, they are pretty much an extinct race. They're still about and they are animate, but they are not necessarily alive. So they are pretty much an extinct race. There probably will be Stone Summit, there you go. There probably will be those guys around there in Guild Wars 2. And as I mentioned before, there's a really old map that we once had of an area, really kind of late game area in Guild Wars 2 that had had a lot of the original dynamic events marked on there. This was so long ago now that those events might not exist anymore, but on that map it did say one of the events was called the Stone Summit Ruinator. So they might still be about, and they might still have events about them, but they certainly haven't been seen in the beta at the moment. I haven't seen a single dwarf at all in Guild Wars 2. I'm guessing they're going to be more personal stories type stuff, or maybe we won't even see them till we start taking the fight to Prideormus. But regardless, yeah, they have all turned to stone. How exactly the Stone Summit came to accept that, we don't know. But then that same question goes for Ogden as well. When did Ogden decide that normal life wasn't for him anymore and he wanted to become stone and he wanted to be changed in body and mind and essentially die? I mean, who decides to make that choice? A lot of the dwarves wanted to, while the Great Destroyer was still a big threat, but if you chose not to turn to stone and then the Great Destroyer was defeated, what's your compulsion there to go and do that? Well, you're just dooming your race. Stay alive, produce offspring. So I suppose at some point it will have been forced on them, but how that happened, we don't know at the moment. The next question is from Kind Jin, who says, what do you think about Guild Wars 2 being on PS3? I never talked about this on my channel. I find it quite funny, though, that there were at least 3 occasions while Guild Wars 2 was being developed where a developer said something kind of offhanded or something very vague along the lines of, oh, we're not opposed to releasing on console, but we really don't have the resources. There's been a few times where someone said something like that, and there's been a bit of a blip where all these different press sites have gone and said, oh, look, they're going to do stuff on console, Guild Wars 2 on console. It's like, the worst one was the most recent one. That was just absolutely terrible, but it's happened a few times, and people have been speculating about Guild Wars 2 on console. Now that the release date has been announced, I guess we can quite conclusively say that at least for a long time, Guild Wars 2 will not be a console game. It could feasibly be one, though. The limited skill bar really does lend itself quite well to making an MMO that could, in my opinion, be ported to a console with reasonably less stress than other MMOs might, but it's not on their plans. They haven't mentioned anything about it except those few offhand remarks that had sparked these little conversations before among people, and I'm not expecting it to come on the console, not for a long time. Maybe at some point when Guild Wars 2 is starting to fail or something, they'll decide, right, we need to expand our audience, let's put it on the console, but don't hold your breath. As for my opinion about it being on consoles, as long as it doesn't dumb down the PC version of the game, why not? It's more people that come to play. I think that would be quite cool, and as I say, I think it, if any MMO, would be one of the easier ones to port over there, but you probably wouldn't find me playing it on a console. I'd hate that. I did play Guild Wars 1 with an Xbox 360 pad. I spent a long time like refining this setup I had. In fact, the first video on my channel ever, it's actually been deleted now, but the first one I ever did was me showing off me being able to play in random arenas in Guild Wars 1 using an Xbox 360 pad, and I was totally functional and everything was perfectly fine. I wouldn't want to resort to that for normal play for Guild Wars 2 though, except maybe using a chat pad, because that was another thing I spent a long time with once before, trying to get drivers for the chat pad, the Xbox 360 chat pad, to work, and then it was fine because you could actually type and everything using just the controller, and that was a lot of fun. But then that would be like expecting people to have a peripheral to play the game, and it would just all get very confusing. So I'm not opposed to it being on the consoles. I don't think it will be on the consoles for a long time, and even when it is on the consoles, I probably won't play on them, though. We'll be happy that the community will, at least to some extent, get larger. And no, I don't think that just because someone's a console player, they're going to be more immature or something like that. I think it'll be perfectly fine. But there you go, guys. That's the Great Guild Wars 2 countdown for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I guess I will see you tomorrow for, I want to do servers. Do you know what I'm thinking of doing? I'm thinking of this weekend just doing a massive thing where I just knock out all the servers in like one long video. That might not happen though. I might get distracted and do other stuff, but I am tempted now because I wouldn't want to drag it out over lots of little ones anymore. So we'll see. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, guys. I'm rambling. I will see you tomorrow.